Yeah, I asked God, please send me to the perfect church. And he said, I can't do that, but why don't you go to the intersection?
Close enough.
Good morning.
Good morning.
It's always a privilege to do this. And today we're going to talk about some stuff. In the video I was talking a little bit about deconstruction and how I've let go of a lot of those things. And I had some time to, I always have time to think when I drive around. That's kind of my God time, is just me and God having conversations. And I was thinking this past week just about the things that I used to believe. Take that inventory.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, take that inventory and just keep going back year after year and go back, and all of a sudden you just like, I don't even know who that guy was, you know. And the me today would probably punch Rudy of 1998 in the face, you know. I mean, it's kind of crazy, but that's what we're talking about today is you know, the general idea of the intersection being inclusion and acceptance, and then we get into other good stuff like love and forgiveness, mercy, compassion, and these are the things that make us different than a lot of traditional ideas. One of the things that I work really hard at is not being who I used to be. And then I realized that was almost an idol for me. You know, I was like, well, I'm not like him. I'm not like her. I'm not like them. You know, not every time I hear some major evangelical figurehead say something stupid,
Right.
I'm like, I take just a brief moment and go, I thank you that I was given the opportunity to process this stuff and not be that way anymore. Because don't we forget, you know, what we once were. I started in church when I was 15 years old. Started going to Bible study on Tuesday nights. I got indoctrinated.
Right.
And you know, there's a point in my life where most people in this room would be off the table. There would not be people that I would have hung out with. You wouldn't have hung out with me either. No, you would not have hung out with me. And so, anyway, I just want to talk about it. Most spiritual communities and religious organizations, they put a lot of emphasis on growth. Got to grow. Got the parable of the sower. We've got, we'll talk about a little later, you know. We talk about harvests. We talk about a lot of things. And the emphasis on growth, it puts a certain pressure on us. You know, because it's like, if you don't grow spiritually in your spiritual communities, then you are not meeting the mark that has never been defined. It's never been defined. It's like, you gotta grow. And when you disagree, or when you question certain spiritual ideas that are from the person that's standing in front, telling you how to live your life or explaining things and interpretations and all that, it's you're just immature. And so when we put the emphasis on the growth, we're trying to prove that we're spiritually strong and destined for great things in the kingdom. But what if I told you that the things of God, when it comes to you, are co-signed by him or her, however you want to refer to God. And there is a co-heirness within all of that that makes you complete where you are now.
That's right.
So striving for perfection and for all of that is futile, pointless, and downright stupid. So, I'm now going to give you all permission to no longer be stupid. And I try to give myself the same permission, but I'm a little harder on myself. So the problem with all this idea of growth at all cost is that no one puts any thought into it. It's like trained dogs jumping through the hoop. As long as they get through the hoop, then that's okay. But there's no real thought into what's there. There's no real thought to who God is, and there's no real thought to who you are. You know, when you figure out who God is and then figure out who you are, you've got life by the tail. And that's things that there's a lot of things in religious and spiritual communities that make that really hard for you because you're trying to do. And what you do is you go out there and you're like, I'm going to plant seeds without any thought of what I'm planting and what I'm planting it in. And then there's a whole nother identity part of this, is that you may be required and mandated to plant certain seeds into certain soil that I'm not. And because you're not planting my seed, I have no right to tell you ain't farming right. Okay, so anyway, let's talk about farming while we're talking about it. So we have to use the soil of the earth. Uh-oh. Now I'm starting to sound a little pagan Wiccan. So we have to use the soil of the earth. You gotta be nice because I want to go to Diagon Valley. So the soil of the earth, which right now has a plenty of stuff in it that's not very favorable to the eye or the ears or the television. But I think that we have to plant something into the soil that we are given.
Yes.
And I think the compassion is the seed we plant
Yes.
to change the garden.
Yes. Yes. Yes.
I know you're not going to believe this, but I am a somewhat anxious, highly angry person a lot of the time. And I feel my wife going, yes, Lord, yes, save his life. But I've learned that compassion is what is needed to change, even in those things that I am displeased with in the world. So when we look at Jesus' example, or Yeshua, in the New Testament, this is what it says in chapter 9, verse 36. And Jesus went through the towns and villages, and he taught in their synagogues. He preached the good news of the kingdom of God. He healed every disease and sickness. He healed every disease and sickness. There's a part there. We should not just pass over that.
Right.
But we're not teaching about that today, but you need to go home and talk about that. Whenever crowds came to him, he had compassion for them because they were so deeply distraught, malaised, and heartbroken. They seemed to him like lost sheep without a shepherd. And Jesus understood what an awesome task it was before him. And he said to his disciples, the harvest is plentiful, but the workers are few. Ask the Lord of the harvest to send more workers into the harvest field. Now, if you have been in traditional church of any type, you know that this is all about evangelism. Hello, have you heard the word of the Lord today? Nothing. I would rather chew broken glass than go knock on people's door and tell them about Jesus. I am not that guy. Not only that, with this mug, nobody's really welcome in that anyway. Because when they open your door and I'm standing there like this, I only got 2 more hours of this crap. Hey, do you go to church? Yeah, you're going to hell. See you later. But the harvest is plentiful, the workers are few. Ask the Lord of the harvest to send more workers to harvest. Did you notice that when he's talking about this, and I want to add something to this little bit. If you read the entire 9th chapter of the book of Matthew, he heals a paralyzed man. He calls Matthew the tax collector. He raises an official's dead daughter. On his way to raise the dead daughter, a woman with an issue of blood touches his cloak and gets healed. Then he comes up to a group of blind men and heals them. And then he comes upon a demon-possessed man, and casts out the demon. And then he wraps it all up by saying, oh yeah, I had compassion on all those people because they're so deeply distraught and heartbroken. And you look at it, and there's so many things that are happening there, and it's a whole different thing, and I could talk like for hours on this. But the paralyzed man was healing in the body, and so was the woman, the issue of blood. He called Matthew the tax collector, who was the rejected and the outcast. He healed a blind men who could not see, and I wonder how that works both spiritually and physically. And then he gets into the man who had the demon / crazy / mental illness / spiritual health. And he did all that in one chapter and wraps it up by talking about compassion.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
You know, I believe a lot of weird crap. Some stuff, I'm not even sure it should be spoken about. It's just me and my weird crap. But I'll tell you what, it's really interesting. I bet that if without compassion for humanity, we will never see humanity healed in their body or their mind or their soul until we do it. Because the idea that we have been placed on this planet to hold the fort till Jesus comes back or till God does something is BS. Because I think that that's not it at all. Because you see, there was nothing here that mentioned about the planter here. Jesus said the harvest is ready. And it's so ready, we need more people to go out there and harvest the fields. And what was he doing? He was being compassionate.
Right.
So, let's talk about that. What does God want us to plant? Who should be planting? And are we really all a bunch of farmers? Compassion is a good idea. Jesus understood the awesome task before him and his disciples, and he said to his disciples, harvest is plentiful, the workers are few. Ask the Lord of the harvest to send more into his harvest field. And I think it's a mandate to do some good, literally picked by God to change the world and work the harvest. Now, in the traditional church, we know that that means the old word of proselyte, but I think it's time to get with a mandate to be like Jesus, to have that love and compassion to change the world and learn to spiritually farm. So what do we need to have a good, let's use green for growing. We need seed. Let's do it over here. What else? Water.
Sunlight.
Oh, somebody went to school. What else? Woo! Soil. Wonder why you picked that. Okay. And what else? Manure. Those are the things that we need. So, all right. So here we go. We got everything we need.
He wanted to. He wanted it.
Let's see. Leon's already got a check by his name. That's it. You're out of here. All right. So let's look at this. Let's look at what's going on in the world right now. Okay. So we have social media. We got hate. Injustice. If I spell anything wrong, I just could have done. Terror.
There you go. There you go.
You have the encouragement.
So, manure,
Got plenty of that.
this is the stuff that we see. Some of this is just coming out of the White House.
Yep.
Some of that's just coming out of some religious people. Okay? Now, there's other things. Since we're here and we're at MasterClass, this could also stand for sure, happy, I'm trainable. Or, if it's Tuesday, I'll be saying super happy, it's Taco Tuesday. Okay, so this shit. I love it. I said it and everybody went. It was like this. See, we've been trained to care more about words than we actually are about the message. And that's why these things happen, okay? But the most dirty, filthy excrement, manure, dung, fertilizer, we plant and grow the most beautiful trees and vegetation. So what I'm trying to say to you right now, boys and girls of the MasterClass, is that the harvest still is plentiful. Because we still got this to deal with. And if we have the manure and the shit, we have a place to put the seeds of compassion. Because all of this can be neutralized with compassion.
Good preaching.
Man, he's preaching good today. He is preaching good today. All right. So, let's get into some. Let me write this word down. Extra credit for anybody that can pronounce this word. Ready? You know, we need like a big giant one right here so I can write, so I can turn my back on everybody. Well, you don't get to play because I bet you know how to say this.
Yeah, you.
Super practical.
Anybody can say this?
Yeah,
Good. I don't want you to see it. What do you say? I'm too big to see through?
Spagnetizoma.
Mm-hmm.
Spagnetizoma.
There you go. Do you know what that word is? That's a Greek word for compassion. So, I'm gonna get that tattooed somewhere. Just because it's cool, but I have to learn how to say it first. So get this. While we're on the subject of shit, get this. So, this word, sabaganijizami, okay? Sabaganijizami, okay, whatever it is. Sabaganijizami, okay? The word, it means to have a yearning in your bowels.
Come on now.
Be a shitty sermon today. Okay, so it means to have a yearning in the bowels. It's figuratively is to feel sympathy or pity, but it's within the bowels. To be moved with, to have your bowels moved with compassion. Now, you're thinking as bowel, as what you think, but bowels were regarded as the seat of the more violent passions. So in Hebrew, in the Greek, when they were talking about this, it was from their innermost place. Their heart, it was from their guts. You know, you can I hate their guts. I love you with my guts. Can you imagine that? Let me tell you something, Dia, I love you with my bowels. Does that work? I don't know. But in the seat of the tender affection, kindness, compassion, hence our heart, our tender mercies, affection. That's what this means. And so, when he says that he had compassion, he was moved. I've heard some people teach that he was so moved that he wanted to be sick because he had this yearning, he had this churning within him that he wanted to vomit because it was so deep within Christ to do that. And then it says that he saw the people as harassed, like a sheep without a shepherd. And that word is Skyllo, so Skylio, or Skylio, or no, I should really learn Greek. I know where to find it, I just can't say any of it. Okay, so that means that he saw them harassed, flayed, skinned, mangled, vexed, troubled. I've heard it presented that that actually is the same type of word that they would use for rape or to be attacked by a wild man or a wild animal. So Jesus is moved by his innermost guts, his bowels, with compassion on people. And we just saw in that entire 9th chapter, he did all these things. And the icing on the cake is that because of his compassion, he did these things. And since Christian means Christ-like, and those who claim to follow Christ that do anything other but have this form of compassion are not following Jesus. Because Jesus' compassion doesn't avert his eyes from the homeless guy with the on the street sign.
Mm-hmm.
Jesus' compassion doesn't ignore the emotionally distraught because they're emotionally distraught now. It's a little uncomfortable to be around.
Come on.
I'll stop there because I could go crazy on that. And what I've learned is that compassion is not a special gift. Compassion is not a special calling. No, it's mandated to everyone who claims to follow Jesus.
Yes.
It's mandated to everyone that believes that the Creator is a loving Creator. Compassion is a choice, not a gift only given to a chosen few. Compassion is the DNA of God. And in that DNA of God is in you and I. You were created in the image of God. And if you're created in the image of God, you must have pieces of God within you. Because God does what? He works around us, through us, in us, and we are God. His hands and feet, the body of Christ. All those things that we've learned through traditional stuff. Our spiritual DNA says that we can work this out because of our perfection that's already put in us. We don't have to wait for something to do it. Compassion can come when we choose to do it. It does not come easy to me. Babe, does it come easy to me? No. No, it doesn't come easy to me. I have to choose it. And no one said it was going to be easy because I just thought, well, you know. Let Pastor be compassionate. I'm going to be warrior-like. So, if we're supposed to plant compassion, we need to figure out what compassion is. According to Buddhism, compassion is an aspiration, a state of mind, wanting others to be free from suffering. It's not passive. It's not empathy alone, but rather empathetic altruism that actively strives to free others from suffering. Dalai Lama said that on July 9th, 2018. We are trained from an early age to look at a person who is acting outside the norm as an opponent.
Mm-hmm.
And I might add that acting outside of our norm
That's right.
is an opponent and needs to be contained or controlled. How many people here like to be controlled? Yeah. Not in the special place, okay? I'm talking about in general. People glad they came to church today. Talking about shit, and sex, and so. But nobody really likes to be controlled. In fact, I will go further to say that we really don't even like to follow rules. And what is happening all around us all the time is we see people trying to be controlled because they're looked at as the opponent or the opposition. Trying to contain a person who's acting a certain way, but he's acting or she is acting that way for a reason. But compassion mandates us to stop and ask what the reason is. Usually, it's that a person has a need and is afraid their need will not be met. 100% of the time. And they feel this way because of social media, hate, injustice, and terror they've experienced, or what history has mandated toward their people group or towards whatever, their class. And they're scared and they need to be heard and they just want to be helped. And that's what we're for. I don't think there's anything wrong with building. I don't think there's anything wrong with buildings. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. I think that you have to have a place to meet. I don't even think there's anything wrong with building great big buildings.
That's right.
I don't think there's anything wrong with paying someone what they're worth. If they're managing that building called a church, and they're called a pastor or a prophet or a music, I don't have any problem with that. But when any of that supersedes people, it's in the wrong motive and it's not
That's
Jesus.
it. That's right. That's right. That's right.
And that's what compassion is, and compassion is who Jesus was. So what the hell are we doing out there? Somehow the scales fell from my eyes because at one point I would have been all up in that. And now I'm looking at it and I'm like, well, wait a minute. Oh, I know what happened. I said, Jesus, make me more like you. He was poor. What was that prayer? Where can I return that prayer back? I'd like to go to prayer return. I don't want to be that much like you, Jesus. I'd like your influence and your philosophy and your wisdom, but he was also crucified and killed for who he was. So I'm like, oh, snap. Make me like me, Lord. Okay. So, one of my favorite stories in the Bible is the story of blind Bartimaeus. If you don't know the story, I'm not going to read it to you. I'm just going to give you a quick overview. Bartimaeus was a blind beggar. And what we learn in the book of Mark, Gospel of Mark, is that the beggar was doing what he did. He was blind and he was begging. And Jesus was coming by and he heard the crowd, and the crowd started saying, oh, hey, Jesus Christ is coming by, you know. And so Bartimaeus jumps up and starts screaming, Jesus, son of David, have pity on me, have mercy on me. And they're like, shut up, stupid beggar. Shut up. It's an important person coming by. His whole caravan's about to come. And he screamed even more, have pity on me, Jesus, have pity on me. And it says that Jesus stopped. The need was presenting itself. He says Jesus stopped, and then the crowd stopped. And those around looked at the blind man, and they're like, oh, check it out. Blind beggar man. He heard you, and he's calling for you. Get up and go to him. And it says, and it records, that Bartimaeus cast aside his beggar's robe and stepped forward. Feeling his way towards Jesus. He had to have been feeling his way. Now, Jesus comes face to face with blind Bart. And he's like, here they are. Jesus doesn't ask his name. Doesn't ask why he threw off his coat. Doesn't do anything. He says, what do you want me to do? What do you need? In fact, the Greek says, what me to you? What me to you? What me to you? And he says, Rabbi, I want to see. And he says, oh, yeah, your face made you well, go in peace. And in that moment, he saw again. If you remember, the crowd was trying to shut him up. And then the crowd was all on his side. The crowd never gets it right. But the compassion treats people as more Because the opposition treats people like Bartimaeus as the opponent and less than, but compassion treats people as equal and more than.
Yes.
Because humanity has a value worth more than humans have placed on ourselves. He saw the need, he shared empathy, and he gave him options. Oh, your faith has made you well. If we do this, the world's going to change. So when the person comes in, they're acting outside of your norm. What is wrong with this woman at the register on register 7? My God. Why is she acting that way? Why is she throwing a fit? Why can't she control her kids? Blah, 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 blah. What does she need?
Compassion.
Is anybody even asking the question to these people that are shooting up schools and bars and things like that? Why? Is anybody asking that question? We just immediately go, rejected, no good. They're human beings.
That's right.
Right.
They're human beings. There's a reason they're doing that, and we should be finding out why. Do you know that before, well, it wasn't that long ago, where they didn't even know why serial killers did what they do, but then they started a thing in the FBI. Behavior, the behavior, that thing.
Profiling.
Yeah, and the BAU, I can't remember what it stands for, and they started studying, figuring out why people do things, and they could actually start profiling these things and find out who and why and catch them and do all kinds of stuff. What if we started doing the same thing with that and find out what it was? I read the story not that long ago about a woman named Connie Rice who sued with the ACLU in the city of Watts. And she did something like $10 billion worth of stuff. And a lot of it was against LAPD because of police brutality. And then it was so hard work that after, I think something like 15 years, she quit. She stopped. Because she saw that it was pointless. It was never going to change in her current way. She says you can't legislate compassion. So she stopped, she changed her tactic, and after suing and being on TV, she walks into the police station as the enemy and interviews over 900 police officers and says, "What do you need?" And then they started working with the city of Watts, and they started doing tutoring, and they started having people from the thing come in there, and crime rates dropped by 90%. Murder dropped 70%. Property damage dropped 99%. Why? Because it was met with compassion and not legislation.
Right.
Okay? So I will wrap up with this thought. Here's the deal with compassion. Compassion is about collaboration, not domination.
Yes.
Right.
That's good.
We collaborate with our human
That is good.
brothers and sisters. We don't try to dominate them. We don't try to get them to do and be what we want them to be. We try to find out what it is that they need. And we have to get this. Everyone out there is moving to dominate, to take things by force, motivated by fear, and history says so much about all those sorts of people groups. But if we are motivated by fear, we will reap the results of fear. We can change this place for better by creating a movement of people who are compassionate and co-laborers with other people. Compassion is power. Compassion is the real power. We are called to go deeper. We are called to go higher. As it says in James chapter 1, verse 27, real, true religion from God the Father's perspective is about caring for the orphans and the widows who suffer needlessly and resisting the evil influence of the world. Compassion isn't about sitting down. It's about rising up.
Yes.
So I don't have discussing questions because I think this probably has question after question after question. And